This is the Wealth Standard Radio, your gold standard in everything financial.
Good morning, everyone. This is Patrick Donohoe. Welcome to episode 170 of the Wealth Standard Radio. 170 shows. That is, I don't know how I talked that much.
That's a lot of Patrick.
And now we have a lot of Chunga.
Apparently.
Chunga, you're back.
I told you
Where'd you come from?
I told you I wouldn't jump in like I did last time.
But you're here
I
again. Two in a row.
Thanks for having me back.
No, we got a ton of good reviews from the last podcast.
We had a lot of fun, didn't we?
We did, and it's like political season, so there's no one better to talk about and be humorous about politics, right?
I sure hope so. It's really
hard not to be.
It's all anybody is talking about, right?
Yeah.
Anytime I pull up the internet, anytime I open my phone, there's some sort of new.
It's everywhere.
Something that's going on.
It's crazy. I'm done. I'm kind of done with it.
Are you really? You've had enough?
I don't know. We had another month or so, but yeah, it's getting a little old.
It's going to be a long month.
Yeah,
I'm afraid. It's almost hour by hour. There's some sort of new muck or new slime that's coming out about one of the two candidates.
It's crazy. The world is like insane. I mean, you had all the WikiLeaks stuff and Julian Assange, and I heard today or a couple days ago that there was a huge DNS strike. Like Yahoo went down and some car websites went down. It was crazy.
You had Netflix.
Yeah, Netflix went down. That's true.
Spotify.
Yeah, is that nuts?
You had Twitter.
Yeah.
SoundCloud.
Really?
The list goes on and on and on. Yeah, really creepy. All at once.
Well, crazy times, but we're going to talk about some fun stuff today, right?
Oh yeah, what's on your mind, Patrick? What are we talking about today?
Well, let's do some announcements first. Then we'll kind of get into it.
Sounds good.
So for those of you who have been listening for a while, we have these like virtual summits that we do, and we have one coming up about real estate investing. So that's going to be on just a couple days away, October 28th.
You get a huge turnout for these.
Yeah, it's amazing, and we put them all up for free after, so they're on demand. But it's still cool to see them live. Now it's from I think 2 to 7 Mountain Standard Time. So it's not this 2-day, all day long event. So it's just a few hours. So make sure you go to the website, cashflowwealthsummit.com, and register. And if you can get one presentation, 2 or 3, but the rest will be on demand after that.
So if you don't have the time in your day to catch them all live.
Yeah, most people. Yeah, it's a 5-hour thing. It's not all, but I think last time we had almost 11,000 people attend at least one or 2 sessions. And so this time, but we have a lot of people that go back and listen to the recordings.
I would make it like a readathon when you were in school. I'd get my jammies on. I'd get my jammies on. I'd grab a whole bunch of snacks, and I would just camp in front of my computer.
Apparently,
for
you haven't seen the presentations. I'm just kidding.
I would just sit in front of my computer and just watch the entire thing.
Cool. So go to the website, cashflowwealthsummit.com. And another thing too, which I think we should start announcing. It's we on the same platform that we're using, the same technology platform that we use for the Cash Flow Wealth Summit.
Yeah,
we're able to do another event. So we're actually going to do a client event this coming December. And the client event's actually going to be 2 days long, and we're going to have all of our advisors participate and actually speak on a specific topic. Mm-hmm. And it ranges from estate planning and asset protection to real estate investing to what we do to how do you use our specific products in retirement. So it's going to be amazing. I mean, there's a ton of topics. We're really excited about it. Logistically, I think we pulled off the summit this past year with like 30 speakers scattered throughout the country.
Which was crazy.
Yeah, hopefully we can manage the logistics of guys that are here, but I don't know. We'll see.
These guys are very busy. They're some of the best financial advisors on the planet, these people, and it should be a lot of fun to have them all in a 2-day time frame. The amount of knowledge, the font of knowledge you're going to have here is incredible. So you should definitely sign up for it.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. I can't wait. And we're putting it together, but we don't necessarily have a landing page up right now because it's just for clients only. Just
getting it put together. Yep.
Yeah, but we'll put a link on the private client Facebook page, and we'll also put a link on the blog. Okay. And we're trying to make it so that you can invite one guest. So we're working on kind of that functionality right now. Cool. But we'll be releasing some additional information.
Hopefully we can have something put together we can put in the show notes here for this podcast as well.
Yeah, for sure. That's the plan.
Okay.
So last thing too is we've been working on a kind of a cool So doing this, you look at a lot of clients, and you look at a lot of people's finances, and some of the things that they are doing well, some of the things they're not doing so well, and regardless of kind of the the demographic or the socioeconomic status, you always have people that get hosed with cars when buying a car.
Oh man.
And it's crazy because you look at all of the the industry associated with car lending is not regulated. Well, somewhat, but not highly regulated.
It's kind of that one piece of industry where you can still really, really negotiate when you sit down.
Oh, for sure. But most people, we're not taught. We're not, most Americans, we're not taught critical thinking. We're not taught negotiating and debate. And so this is, we wrote this pretty long ebook, and we did it with someone that was in the car industry for a long time, and kind of learned the trade secrets and kind of how to get around this and this and this. So we built this kind of checklist and guide as well as ebook, and we built this killer calculator that'll help with pricing and budgeting and steps. So that's gonna be out this week. So make sure you go to the show notes and get a link to that.
Well, and I've got to tell you, I haven't even spoken to you about this yet, but I got to proof the script and the I guess the copy, for lack of a better term, of this ebook.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Went through it and got to do some of the work on the book. And I just bought a car yesterday.
No way.
And I applied many of the principles that I learned. I can endorse this wholeheartedly because pretty much everything that I read in the book turned out to be the case, and it was a tremendous help to me in buying my car. I got a great rate. I'm very excited about my car, and the ebook really, really helped me.
Well, there's the Jedi. The Force is real. And there's Jedi mind tricks, and if you use your anyway. No, there's some really cool. I'm just kidding.
You're not far off. If you read this book, you're gonna feel like that for sure.
Yeah, you have to use a certain tone and speed, and you attack them.
This is not the warranty you're looking for.
No, you do not want to charge me that fee on that line right there. So anyway, it's a cool little book, and the calculator is really, really awesome. The designers that put that together is going to be cool. So anyway, so it's going to be available this week. So yeah, if you guys want to go on there and download that, it's going to be free. Okay, definitely do that. It'll be on the the wealthstandardradio.com, and also just check our Facebook page as well and our blog. We'll put it on there.
Great,
too. Cool. All right, man. So we're gonna get into a topic that most people the idea and the name. I don't think most people know what it is, but it's been in the news all over the place in the last couple of weeks. So if you didn't know what it was before, you do now. And if you still are kind of scratching your head as to what we're about to say means, you are in for a treat because this will be a shock to you. You will never forget the definition of these three words.
I think a lot of people, this phrase, this term gets bandied about a lot, especially right now. You hear a lot of people saying it, but even just in casual conversation with people I know, you hear people saying, "Oh, well, so and so is accused of this, and so did this," and they say the term, and I can tell when they're saying it, they have no idea what it actually means. Yeah. And so you and I were talking about, what are we going to do for the podcast? And we came up with...
Drum roll.
The term is?
Pay to play.
What does pay to play mean?
Pay to play. What does it mean? I don't know.
Well, I'm guessing. Do you want me to say? I know what it is.
You're the political talk show host. I think the true, you're like the Politicopedia, whatever it's called.
Well, in the most layman of terms, it's like bribery.
Okay. Yeah.
It's kind of a roundabout legal way of bribing somebody, where if you want influence, you have to give certain money in certain areas to get that influence, basically.
And it's interesting because it's like, but most people put a negative connotation on it, pay to play. And again,
in the media, it has a very negative connotation.
It does, right?
Yeah.
But you're paying for a service, right? And again, I'm here to take a stance, which is basically not for or against, right? Because
I think it's, man.
Yeah, my thing is, it's kind of like you look at it objectively, and for pay to play, it's like when you pay for a car, you get something in exchange. When you pay for information, you get information. So bribery is kind of like it's an exchange, whether it's good or bad. And we're going to get into a lot of those details. It depends on the circumstances, I would assume, but really this whole idea of pay to play, and it's obviously relating to some of the WikiLeaks emails that came out,
and the Clinton Foundation.
But it's everywhere.
Specifically.
It's everywhere.
Well, it's capitalism, and that's where I have a kind of a hard time with this. Is that it's bad news, and pay to play is attached to it all over the place. And so you and I were talking, and we both kind of went, well, wait, hold on a second. Why is this always a bad thing? Sure, it can be a bad thing in certain circumstances, but I think it really depends on the situation. And I don't think the pay to play is overall a bad deal. Now, I know there's probably a lot of people that are going to be listening to the Wealth Standard Radio.
Well, they're not listening anymore.
These two guys have lost their mind. But just, hear us out, because pay to play is not bad. Yeah. It can actually be very, very good if you know what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think, it's this... it's not fair. It comes down to, well, they get a favor and I don't. They have money, I don't. Therefore, they get privilege and I don't. Right. So I think there's an element of that, which is kind of the natural reaction to things, because you always have this kind of we're kind of a comparison society where it's like, okay, what am I like compared to this person? What am I like? It's hairstyle, it's clothes style, it's the music you listen to, it's the stuff that you do on the weekends. It's like everything is like, what somebody else did. Right? There's very little that's original anymore.
It starts in preschool, kindergarten, somewhere around there, to make sure every kid in the class gets a cookie.
Yeah. So really think about it. When you think, okay, well, is pay to play bad? Think about why. Okay, well, the Clintons, paid millions or got millions of dollars from this, foreign entity, and in exchange for, they'll push this through and they'll do this and invite them to dinner or do this, or
they'll speak at their conference,
embargoes. I mean, there's all, exactly. Like they'll pay for, speaking here or speaking there. So it's like if you're against that, come back and answer the question why. Why are you negative against that? I mean, now I'm not voting for them, but at the end of the day, it's like that's their choice. They can do whatever they want.
I think the stance you're taking is, hey, this is a free country, and this is how business works, for lack of a better term.
So let's go maybe go into the details of why, what is the specifics of what's in the news. Yeah. And then I kind of, we've had some actual episodes on other topics that kind of relate to this in politics, in Congress. And I want to go through that, and I want to, kind of pull it apart a little bit and get your take on whether it's ethical, it's moral, and why people think it's not ethical or immoral. So let's first go into the details of this whole pay to play issue with the Clintons. What's that all about? Well,
the pay to play issue with the Clintons, in short, is that there is a lot of worry. There's a lot of concern that Hillary Clinton, while in her position as Secretary of State, was exchanging money that was being funneled to the Clinton Foundation in exchange for government favors. Now, in that case, I think there's some grounds to have some pretty serious concern. If the people of the United States are being guided a certain way by foreign governments, especially those who may not be friendly to us, there's a real concern there.
Yep.
Now, if Hillary Clinton is not Secretary of State, if Hillary Clinton is just working as the chairman of the board of the Clinton Foundation, or whatever her title may have been, and she is accepting money from foreign governments to go and speak on behalf of the Clinton Foundation, I see absolutely nothing wrong with any of this.
Yeah. But because she's in politics, because she's
an elected official working for the people.
Yep. So looking at that, but with what she's done, there's a lot of others. They've done the same thing, right? You have politician after politician after politician that's done the same thing. Maybe I'm not on that scale, right? But why do you have? you have lobby groups. You have these massive. The lobby industry is like $1 billion industry.
Well, that's something that everybody overlooks.
And that's it. It's go read
all
Atlas.
All a lobbyist is pay to play.
It is. That's 100%. And it's it's interesting. It comes down to scale, right? It's if you go take a pack of gum, it's like a slap on the hand. You go steal $1 million. Oh, it's the same principle.
Theft is still theft,
right? Theft is still theft,
right?
So it's one of those things where it comes down to scale, and it's interesting that I think that's one of the kind of the behavioral. Behavioral psychology is people justify little white things, little tiny things, but then when it's on a massive scale,
it's scalable.
Yeah, so it's interesting because you look at what goes on in politics, period, and people go in as these social servants, and they're trying to do good for the community. And I know that there are some, but a lot of them go in, and it's like the money calls, and then suddenly they're disclosing their net worths in the millions of dollars, right? And it's there's a law passed a few years ago called the Stock Act, and it was passed because there was...
Wait, this was Pelosi that passed this, wasn't it? Was this Pelosi that passed this one?
It was in 2011. Was she speaker in 2011? I can't remember. But she was kind of not... I don't want to use the word implicated, but she was involved in, a Visa IPO and made a ton of money.
That's the one I was thinking about.
And then didn't, when she was speaker, she prevented a lot of credit card legislation from not being voted on. But it's one of those, the lobby idea. You have a banking lobby, you have an insurance lobby, you have an auto
real estate lobby.
Yeah, you have a real estate lobby, right? You have an environmental lobby. It goes on and on and on and on. Why do you have lobbyists, right? And it's just so fascinating.
Most people influence.
It is. That's all that it is. It's whether it's a dinner or whether it's go on my jet or go stay in my penthouse on Fifth Avenue. It's so prevalent there, but yet everyone's up in arms with the Clintons. Now, not to say that did she abuse power? It sounds like she did it in a sense, right? But it's so prevalent in government. Why are we surprised and why are we so irate? And I'm not talking about me, but society in general, Americans in general. Why are we so irate with what she's doing?
Well, yeah. To answer your question, it is yes and yes. Did she do something wrong? Yes. Are elected officials at every level, whether it's the county commissioner or whether it's Congress, are they doing the same thing? And again, the answer is yes. Yep. I agree with you wholeheartedly in the sense that if you're going to make rules for one, you have to have rules for all. Yeah. And I think the thing that's preventing that is because you probably have to throw all of these people out of Congress because they all do it.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate. And so as somebody who personally is not a Hillary Clinton supporter, it's a frustrating thing for me to see what she's doing. But I also, in the very same breath, have to say, well, why is she any different than anybody else that's doing this?
Yeah. And I don't know. It's one of those things where it's a hard argument, right? Because, you look on a positive side and then you also look on a negative side. There's always justification, right? But as I said before, it's been there for a long time, and it's not on just the federal level. It's on the local level. It's throughout the world. This idea has always existed. So right now, what she did, whatever, she's probably done worse stuff.
Well, here's my problem with it is, well, the SEC comes into play here because the SEC lets a lot of people get away with things that other folks can't get away with. Yeah. So I have a problem with it there. It's not a standardized thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I think, and also, and it's one of those, you look at the purpose of government. I don't want to go up on that rabbit trail, but it's one of those things where the purpose has become exacerbated as to what the original intent was. And looking at what the Secretary of State is supposed to do and their responsibilities, once you open the door of bribery or pay to play, right. You can't shut it.
No, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, as they say. So what's your thought on Hillary Clinton then? So these all of these accusations, all of these allegations that are coming out against her, if you were sitting at the head of the Supreme Court, what would you say?
Yeah. Oh gosh, man, I hate those questions.
I know. I like keeping you on your toes, Patrick.
Yeah, I don't know if I would ever be in that type of position. But you know what? Yeah, because she had that responsibility and she swore an oath and she was elected to do these specific things. I think that's outside of the boundaries. Now,
in business.
Yeah, from a business standpoint, insider trading, information is everything. Right. And how can you the information idea is, whether it's the Martha Stewart cases, or it's, a lot of other guys that are in jail still for stuff like that happens every single day.
Right.
The whole congressional insider trading which is the reason why the Stock Act was passed. It's one of those things where, if you're going to have a rule and have a, stipulation for one person, it should be for everybody,
which
don't have it.
Back to our original point. Does it scare you as the CEO of a very profitable, very successful wealth management company? Does it scare you when you're making decisions about certain things that, hey, look, one wrong move and I could find myself, with no ill intent whatsoever, I can find myself in trouble. Do you ever run up against that as a CEO?
Well, that's a good question, because that is one of the reasons why I don't make certain decisions, right? Or we haven't decided to go down a certain path when it comes to, financial management or wealth management. We use, because you get into, raising capital to do deals, or you get into even trading securities, or you get into, the different derivative type of investment strategies. We don't do any of that, right? Because there's a lot of risk there. Because if you lose somebody's money, okay, you're in a world of hurt if you are not set up the right way, and especially from a reputation standpoint. But a lot of what we do, it's never lost, period, ever. And so it's very difficult for us to get into that type of situation. And so, but at the same time, it does. I mean, I remember, a few years ago, we set up what's called a registered investment advisory, which is basically the ability to give people financial advice. Okay, it's a license to do that, right? And be compensated for it. Now you have you have the First Amendment, the freedom of speech idea when it comes to publishing, right? So you can have publishers or in the New York Times or an investment publishing group that can say whatever they want and charge for it, but they can't sell a financial product and get compensated for it. They have to have certain licenses to do that. But we went out and got those licenses so we're able to do that. And just the scrutiny that exists with different financial licenses, it's not fun to look at what some of the recourse is if you get into those
it's
crazy
really
type of money management and investing. Super intimidating.
So you guys keep it just at a certain level, and you say, hey, this is where we're going to function. We're just not going to take that kind of risk. Not with us and not with anybody else.
I mean, going to this topic right now, it's like the whole pay to play idea. It's like there's how many documentaries, how many movies have come out in the last 2-3 years?
Billions on Showtime, which is great.
You look at The Big Short, or you look at Inside Job, which is a documentary narrated by Matt Damon.
Right.
You look at, and it's basically all about all the crap that goes on in markets. And it's like they're all rigged. We know they're rigged. The movies say over and over and over and over. It's like, why would you participate in something like that if you're not one of the people rigging it? So the idea is, with what we do, I don't care what happens there, right? Am I surprised, the insider trading idea and what manipulation happens? I'm not surprised, right? When the Big Short stuff came out, it was fascinating, but it wasn't like, ooh, I didn't know they did that. I mean, it was one of those that makes sense.
It was a big eye opener, I think, for a lot of people, even more jaded, more veteran people in money markets and in finance that saw that, I think were pretty surprised. I was pretty surprised.
Yeah, and I think going into kind of when all the dirty laundry came out during 2008, 2009, people became aware of what those things were. I just think that Lewis did an amazing job. Michael Lewis did an amazing job at really articulating with a movie, right? A good story that explained what happened, but nobody knew what was going on then. And right now, it's not like anything's different. Right now, there may not be a mortgage bubble, but there's a lot of other bubbles.
Tons.
And there's a lot of other principles that, even though it's not backed by the investment isn't backed by real estate, it's backed by a car, or it's backed by student loans, or there's all sorts of instruments that are created similar to the derivatives that crash the mortgage market. They exist with car loans. They exist with government bonds. They exist with corporate bonds and junk bonds and oil bonds. Exist with it's insane, kind of all these different financial products that are out there, which is the same story as as The Big Short. So our point in explaining all this is, whether it's the insider trading idea, whether it's what's going on in Wall Street, whether it's high frequency trading, which is Michael Lewis's Flash Boys book. It's all that stuff. It should tell people, don't have your money there, right? Have it somewhere else. And people still complain when they lose, and they're like, oh,
I think they're just conditioned a certain way. They're conditioned from the minute they enter the workforce that this is what you have to do. This is the way you need to manage your money. This is where you need to put your money, so on and so forth.
I mean, it's the social, it's the social bond theory. It's the idea that, I'm going to do what everybody else does. And when they lose, I lose, and therefore it's not as bad, which is totally logical. But
that's crazy. That seems totally crazy. Okay, so back to pay to play.
Yep.
Excuse me. When is it a good thing?
I mean, pay to play.
We've talked about how it's
and making a decision on it. That's all pay to play is like you buy information, right? You buy a news feed, or you buy, because you basically have different trading software that's out there. And this goes to the Wall Street, where it's more expensive than others. Therefore, you can place trades faster, right? And you pay for that. You pay to be able to do that, which gives you the upper hand. That's all pay to play is basically you pay to get the upper hand. You pay to be in a better position than somebody else, right?
That's all it seems like to me. So I don't know why it has. Well, I do know why it has such a negative connotation to it in the political world, but in the business world, how do you get in trouble in the business world? Is it only through insider trading when you're talking pay to play? Is that really the only way that you can get into trouble?
That's a good question. I would say, the financial side of things. Yeah, I guess you can, because I think there's the whole like generally
the SEC scares me.
The GAAP principles. You know what GAAP principles are? Generally
sure.
accepted accounting principles. GAAP principles. You have these. I mean, that is a freaking cluster of any. But
Right.
there's so many ways in which a company can put losses in a certain area or put profits in a certain area or defer here and it basically for a publicly traded company, right? That's it. They can kind of suppress until certain points or defer until certain points. So, it's one of those things where it occurs there, which affects, company value. As far as, and that's, I think it still has to do with trading, but that's a good question.
And you're really never, no matter how much regulation there is or how many rules are in place, there's never going to be a way to put a cap on pay to play. There will always be ways. There's always going to be.
Yeah, you're never gonna get around that idea.
Okay, so your advice to people then that are worried about the stock market, or they're worried about insider trading, or they're worried about that from a business perspective or a political perspective is, hey, just don't put your money in the market.
Yeah, that. And also, don't waste your time being upset about that stuff happening, because it's like, it's happening. It's not like it's going to stop, and it's not like suddenly everyone's going to wake up, a saint in Washington, D.C. It's just not going to happen. And in Wall Street, it's not going to happen either, right? You need to kind of, pay attention to what's going on and make decisions objectively, not make decisions based on a crowd, not make decisions based on, emotion or impulse. And, I just think people are in a sense conditioned to do that. So the pay to play idea, it's
like human nature almost.
Yeah, I mean, some of the WikiLeaks emails, I read some of them and saw news headlines, and I'm like, am I really surprised? I'm not really surprised, right? Does it keep me up at night? It doesn't. What's going to happen is going to happen. And it was going back to even Obama's first term and second term. People thought the world was going to end. Yeah, Obama's, we're done. We should should put all our money in a bunker and go get a shipping container and bury it in our backyard, right? It was one of those. No, it was. And I think, people really look at, Hillary going into, she says she's going to do this and this and this and this. And, in the end, it's like, it's not like she can wave a magic wand and, dictate every single thing that's going to happen to everybody's life. She can't do that.
No, neither one of them can.
But yet they speak like that. And that's what frustrates me sometimes. But in the end, I would say the advice I would give is, this stuff is prevalent and affects markets. It affects business.
So learn how to work it.
Yeah. Learn how to, there's the Wayne Gretzky, quote that says he wasn't focused where the puck was; he was focused on where it was going. Yeah. And it's the idea of like, where is the economy going to go? Is it going to go here? Is it going to go there? What sectors are going to benefit from a Clinton administration? What sectors aren't? What is your profession in jeopardy? Why? The tax side of things. There's so many variables, but in the end, it's like you're never going to be able to 100% prepare for them. Sure. It's just being on your toes, having good advisors, and essentially trying to make the best decision possible given the situation.
I have a couple of questions if I can throw you some curveballs. Yep. You were talking about the different bubbles, how many different bubbles there are currently. Yeah. Is it possible for another bubble, because when the dot-com bubble burst, it greatly affected the U.S. economy. Yeah. When the housing bubble burst, it destroyed the U.S. economy. Yeah. So are there other industries where you could have a bubble burst and have it affect the economy to that level? Or is it really only housing, or is it automotive, or can it be something else?
Well, that's a good question. You have what's called systemic risk. And so if you have a bubble really anywhere, or you have something that happens in, Timbuktu, we're such a universal society that it's going to affect us. Now, it may not be when everything happened in Greece, it wasn't a huge impact. It was an impact, right? When Cyprus,
we felt it.
We felt it. Even though these little economies, we still still felt it. So, there's the bubbles that exist are, there's a huge what's called bond bubble, right? Because all credit is based on the bond market.
Yeah.
And you just have a lot of injection, which is pushing up prices, right? And it's very manipulated. And interest rates really are what control the flow of money everywhere.
Okay.
So I would say, yeah, that's one of the things to pay attention to. But
watch for bubbles.
Yeah, that's a big bubble. And you look at mutual funds, and you look at even sovereign funds. A lot of that's tied to bonds, right? And that could drastically affect the valuation of certain companies, of certain industries. So I would say the bubble there. I mean, there's a student loan bubble. That's
the
huge.
one I was waiting to hear.
Yeah, and that's it's a good question, because I don't know what would, I've kind of played out scenarios in my mind. It's like, okay, well, how does the student loan bubble burst, right? And I mean, I would say it's already bursting because there's so many defaults.
People just walk away from them.
And it's one. You look at really what it would take to start to pursue wage garnishment and leaning homes and leaning other assets because of because you can't bankrupt out of a student loan, right? So when it comes down to it, if there's default, then you can have a judgment against you, and that judgment could essentially allow whoever the creditor is, which is mostly the government right now, right, to come after you, right? And so in a sense, you look at student loans and the government actually lending. They know, I mean, any legitimate, moderately smart person would be able to know that if you give a loan to somebody, $100,000 loan, and their average income is going to be $20,000, the math doesn't add up. They're going to default, right? So what does the student loan become? It becomes a tax, right? Think about it, because you can't default out of it. Now, the government can go in and say, well, you have to give me X percentage of your paycheck by force, not by choice, but by force.
So the government basically looks at this. They know that they're going to get a pretty high percentage of people that are defaulting on their student loans, but they still continue to issue them.
Yeah. But I would also say, that there could be a bailout. Right, there could be a bailout of students, right? And what is a bailout? Because you can't so here's the deal, and this is what it's very hard to understand. It's even hard for me to understand sometimes. But you look at
this coming from one of the best economists on the planet, and it's hard for you to understand.
But yeah, the idea is money has to come from somewhere. If it doesn't come from the student, right? And it's the same thing with Wall Street, right? They were trying to buoy up reserves, right? Because there would be a systemic, credit. Well, I don't want to get into any of that. But looking at student loans, it's like if there's going to be a bailout, right? They're going to do some forgiveness. Let's say they forgive, 50% of the $1.5 trillion in student loans.
Oh my
right?
gosh.
$750 billion will have to come from somewhere. Where is it going to come from?
Taxes.
Yeah, and so here's the thing, that you have to follow the flow of money, right? And I don't know if this is exactly what's going to happen, but if you go back to the crash 2008-2009, right? They basically, the Federal Reserve, started to inject capital. They came out of nowhere. But it had to be exchanged for something, right? So the Federal Reserve came in and came to an agreement with certain banks that we'll buy a certain percentage of yours of preferred stock or whatever.
Right.
And it went to the government too, because they bought a bunch of government bonds.
Okay.
Right. But you got to look at the Federal Reserve just doesn't suddenly wake up and are earning money, right? They can create the money. So they create it, and then they basically take that and they buy something with it, right? So the Federal Reserve buys essentially stock in Bank of America at a certain price, which is probably above the market price, which gives Bank of America a huge capital injection.
Artificially inflates them.
Exactly, right? So with student loans, what would happen is, the Federal Reserve would say, okay, well, if you're going to, forgive half of the student loans for people, of $750 billion, then, we will essentially print $750 billion of capital, and we will buy treasuries. We will buy your bond. We will buy your government bonds. We'll buy your treasuries. Okay. Now the money will go to the government. Then the government basically, makes the creditor whole. It's
what it sounds like?
It's a shell game.
It sounds like a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah.
is what it sounds like to me.
Yep.
So
and that's the same thing. It goes. Social Security is another issue where it's like, more money coming out than going in.
Oh, that's
on
the biggest
FICA
Ponzi
taxes.
scheme ever created.
So it's like you have all these, all these money flows, and it's just, who knows what it's going to wind up. But if you have more government debt, right, that government debt has to be paid back because there is another market. Right, the government debt market is a market. When you have $750 billion of new bonds that are there, right? Where is that? How is that going to affect the holdings of other countries or mutual funds or pension funds?
Oh yeah,
right. It totally affects everybody, and then they have to be paid back. Right. So that's where, you have taxes, which you said before. Right. That's when tax revenue will pay back. But there's just not enough tax revenue to pay back what we currently owe, let alone anything new. So that's what's going to be crazy. I don't know how it's going to shake out, but it's just not, it just doesn't make any sense.
So my next question, and again, it's kind of a curveball question, but it does tie in kind of a roundabout sort of way. So how do you fix this system? Because this is a very flawed system. It's very, very flawed. And the only thing that I can think of to fix this is the very thing that Trump is just been hitting on in the past couple of days, and people are looking at him like he's insane, like they do a lot, and that is to limit how long people can serve. And I know this may seem like it's a little out in left field, but it seems to me that a lot of these guys have been there for decades, and they're on the take, and they're listening to the lobbyists, and they're doing the pay to play, and they're getting the favors, and they're granting the favors, and so nobody really is concerned about the fact that the money is not being watched over or paid back. So the only logical thing that comes to mind for me is to throw them out or limit how long they can serve. Is there any other way to control this other than
I would
that?
say,
Maybe?
I would say, I would ask you a question first, and then this maybe will go into what I think would be a way to do it.
Okay.
But what right now? How is an elected official accountable? Like how do they know that they've done a good job?
Well, it's just their constituency. That's the only way.
Yeah, and that's all the constituency is doing favors. Right. So is it performance? I don't think it's performance. I think it's more favors than anything else. Right. So I would say you have to really define like what makes a successful political leader or a representative. And I think Ron Paul said this. It's like he said if you or Warren Buffett, I think it was Warren Buffett or Ron Paul that said that if you gave term limits, or you basically said if you don't balance the budget right within your term limits, then you're gone.
Well, that seems very logical and very simple to me.
And so and then the term limits too, it's like you have guys that have been there for 30, 40 years. It's insane.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah. And so I would say, that would be
term limits
really
would
good.
be the most effective way.
But then you have the political argument, which is, well, if you have term limits, then nobody's going to be able to go in and really make a difference.
Things up
and
too much.
I'm like, well, in the traditional system, they're probably right, but I don't think the traditional system has worked.
Well, and it goes back to the original point you made, where people they go into Washington fresh-faced and bright-eyed, and it doesn't seem like they're there for too long before they get into the system, and the monkey gets on their back. The financial monkey gets on their back, and then they just start.
Well, I just think this is my opinion. This company, and maybe I'll get. I actually don't get a lot of heat, but.
We need to have you be more opinionated. I think.
No, I think I look at the role of government, and I mean even everything that I'm saying, it's like they should be out of like 95% of what they're doing anyway. Right.
People are applauding you right now.
Especially these days. Right. You look at like, do we really need the Department of Health? Right. Now, people are like probably going crazy on me.
Or
that, EPA. Yeah. It's like, even like local, if like a restaurant sucks and if they have rats crawling around,
people aren't going to go.
We don't need a bureaucrat to say, maybe 50 years ago you needed some, regulation there. But it's like, if there's rats there and if the food sucks, no one's going to go there because it's on Yelp, it's on Facebook. People start to get sick. That place is shut down.
Self-governance. Yeah, it's one of the great things about the internet.
Yeah, and I think that's right now. That should be scaring the crap out of government. So I would say really from a policing standpoint, you have a lot of accountability right now that doesn't require government now. You have other areas as well. I just think you have, and I mentioned the saying with you last time which is Kiyosaki's theory. A students work for C students, B students work for the government, and it's like you have people going to government. There's really not much accountability, and they're just they're playing around. Well, maybe we should try this. We should pass this law and pass this law, and all the laws that are passed are written by lobbyists, right? So it's such a screwed up system. I mean, part of me, and again, I don't think we can handle it. I mean, I think it'd be chaotic, but most of the government should it should go bankrupt in a sense. And Donald Trump has alluded to that before because it's already bankrupt.
There have been a couple of people, including Trump, you're right, that have alluded to just letting the government fail. Because
it is, and it's just we're trying to solve it's insanity. We're trying to solve problems with the same thing, the same decisions that got us into the problems.
Well, and the thing is, and this is kind of a side thing, but this is, I think, the biggest problem, and why term limits may be the only answer, in my opinion, is because people are they're busy, they're trying to survive, they're trying to raise families, they're trying to build careers, and politics to them is 10 minutes in the car, or it may be a quick hit on a notification on their iPhone.
Yeah.
And that's really where it starts and finishes. And I think if people would take 10 minutes and turn that into a half hour, a day, or a half hour every couple of days, I think they'd be terrified.
Yeah.
I really do.
I think another thing too, I think with, if you really want to be a social servant, if you want to serve community in government, you shouldn't get, I don't think you're paid, what the median income is of the country. You're not paid at all, right? And then I would say, because of the information that you have, again, this is not me. I'm just saying, maybe some solutions. I don't know if this is
sure,
but I would say, if it's insider trading stuff, that they should do what most I know the Federal Reserve, the chairman of the Federal Reserve. I think most chairman. So chairman of the Federal Reserve has to have no interest associated with markets. No investments, no brokerage accounts.
Why are people
all their
screaming
holdings.
About that? People should be screaming.
But he does. He has to do that. He does. Not all officials, but he does. And then I think the Secretary of Treasury does the same thing. I think there's certain officials that have to basically rid themselves.
Thank you for explaining that, because I think I'm a pretty learned. Yeah. I think I'm a pretty smart guy.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that. I thought that they could still have interests, their own individual interests in that kind of thing.
No, they don't.
They're not allowed to. Okay.
And I need to go and kind of look at the fine details, but there's a whole, with Henry Paulson. Henry Paulson was CEO of Goldman Sachs,
right?
And then he became the Secretary of Treasury under Bush. And one of the caveats was they have to liquidate all their holdings, but there's no tax on them. So he sold all of his holdings, and it was like,
I thought that they could be put in a blind trust and they could still hang on to them. But if it went into a blind trust, they could hang on to them.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of that's a way to circumvent that and keep money invested. But I don't know what the details are there. But but I would say, one of the things with, really anybody that has some sort of position there, it's like they should be focused on, what their job is, right? And not necessarily, be able to take that information and manipulate it with, being able to trade.
Okay.
Because they're doing that. That's all. I mean, that was the reason why the Stock Act was passed, and they even manipulated the Stock Act at the 11th hour.
Which we talked about.
Yeah,
you actually gave me some information, which it goes back to the Pelosi thing about insider trading and these elected officials that have all kinds of knowledge about when things are going to happen. They clean up on it, and then they do all their regulating after the fact.
We'll put. I have some links. We can post those in the show notes too, which are just links to a lot of the Stock Act and a lot.
If you want to see the sausage being made, go check those links, because it'll give you bad dreams for sure.
No, but that's. I mean, what do you think? I mean, looking at pay to play, it's like, we've talked about it. What do you do? What do you do with government officials? What are some of your ideas and solutions? I'm curious to hear those.
Well, from a guy who's studied politics, politics is supposed to move slowly. Politics is supposed to be ugly. It was set up by the founding fathers to be a cesspool. Thomas Jefferson was one of the biggest critics of the way this whole thing was set up to work. However, it does work. It's ugly. It's not pretty most of the time. It is, in my opinion, the best government, the best way to govern in history. I really do think that. But
do you think that's the way we're doing it now, right? Though.
Well, no,
Yeah.
and that's the problem.
Yeah.
On the surface, the way it was set up, I think it's wonderful. But I think the biggest problem in my mind is the term limits.
Yeah.
Because people can just get in there, get corrupt, and because people don't pay attention, because it's just a blurb that they hear on the way home from work, and they think, well, my world is turning, my life is fine, I'm going to keep voting for that, if they vote at all, I'm going to keep voting for that senator or that congressman or that president because life is fine, and they kind of have blinders on to the corruption.
Well, it's also,
do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I do. And I think that the perspective also from society is the fact that everybody is relying on government to solve the problems. Okay.
Yeah, and
right?
that's
that was never the intention, right? Is the government supposed to create jobs? No.
The government is to make sure
that was never their intention.
That our roads are there. We pay the government to keep us safe, to build our infrastructure, and then get out of the way.
Yep.
I mean, that's really how I look at things. It's a very libertarian way of looking at things.
Yep. But I'd also say you look at, again, problems are problems, and you alluded to it, which is there's no perfect organization because we're all humans.
Exactly.
Right?
It's not human nature to be that way.
And we're all fallible. There may be a perfect system, but there's always going to be people that work within that system. And so I think if you look at, whether it's the Democratic Republic, the Democratic Republic idea, or you look at the libertarian idea, or you look at, I would say in the end, it's like the best thing for me is where people that have an incentive to solve problems are going to do a better job of solving those problems. Now, looking at, the pay-to-play idea, that's not an incentive to solve a problem. That's an incentive to do a favor.
To serve an interest.
To do a favor or serve their interests, not yours.
Sure.
So the idea is, if you have, and that's the thing, you look at the, whether it's traffic, or you look at environmental issues, or you look at, oversight on investment, or whatever the case may be, right? The technology exists today where if somebody does something, I mean, look at Hillary Clinton, right? She, I don't know if she ever thought that there would be all of this stuff released. I guarantee she didn't. Nobody did. But what? You have everybody right now scratching their head saying, "Oh crap! I need to get all those skeletons. Figure out what to do with those skeletons. Figure out what to do with those skeletons."
Well, she just had that statement. She just barely had that statement saying, "Look, there is a public face, and then there's the face of trying to get the machine to function."
Sure. Yeah, and that's the point. It's like you can't get away with anything these days. It's there. It's all there, right? And all information.
I think is a good thing.
And I think it's a good thing. That was my point. It's like if that's the case, right? You investment guys, if you create some sort of like rotten apple. Is it Rotten Apples or Rotten Tomatoes? The movie critic.
Rotten Tomatoes.
Right? Yeah, you have criticism on movies. You have criticism on investment. Managers. You have criticism. All that stuff is there now, and you can have oversight that is more free market rather than very red tape government regulated.
Okay, well, you want to talk oversight? To me, this happened yesterday, and I thought this was brilliant. I hate buying cars. You're just like everybody else. I don't know anybody that likes buying cars, right? Well, I sat down with this guy who had just moved here from Dubai. He's been here for a couple of years. He's selling cars, and he was hands down the best salesman I've ever met in any field. This guy was so respectful and so accommodating and so wonderful. And
where was it? What place was it?
Well, should I just say it was at Larry H. Miller Jeep. I bought a Jeep.
Okay, cool.
And he sat down with me, and at the end of it, and he said, so Chunga, I want to know, how was your experience?
Yeah.
And this is why I'm asking you how your experience was. By the way, he gave my wife roses and the whole thing, which was incredible. I'm buying a Jeep. It's not that big of a deal.
Dude, that was a total female Jedi mind trick.
It worked. I was like, I'll take that warranty. I'll take that gap insurance. Yeah, totally.
That clear thing that's on the other side of the tail light. I'll take that too.
I'll take a bed liner. I don't even have a bed. I'll take it. So, but he did a very good job in the sense that he knew something was coming that I didn't know, which was he was going to have to tell me at the end of the deal, he was going to have to say, look, I have to get a 10 out of 10 on this survey that you're going to get. And if I don't get this, I'm in big trouble.
Yeah.
I have to have a perfect score. I get docked money. It affects my job. It affects my career. And he was very, very honest with me about this. And so he said, if there's anything about your experience from beginning to you signing the papers in finance, if there's anything about your experience that isn't a 10, I need to know about it so that we can fix it.
Yeah.
And he asked me before he even handed over the keys, how was your experience? And so he knew from the minute he shook my hand that this moment was coming. Now, if an elected official has that kind of thing, you're going to get a much different Washington. Do you see what I'm saying?
Now, why does Larry H. Miller do that? They do it because if somebody has a bad experience,
it's going on Yelp.
It's on Yelp. It's on the internet. It's on Facebook, and their business is going to be affected because you drive down to that like auto park and it's like insanity world because there's a million car dealerships there.
It was at the Southtown Auto Mall. Was right about that.
Because if you don't go to them, if you have a crappy experience there, you're going to go right across the street.
Exactly.
So that's the idea. It's again, it goes down to
but it's self-governance again.
It is. It's the idea of competition. It's the idea of self-governance. And I think, these days there's so many different parts of society that are operating here and I think are pushing out government, and hopefully they do leave. It's the the Reagan quote where the closest thing to eternity is a government program, right? And it's the idea that if it's not, if it's there forever. And that's what's scary. Is they're kind of trying to create all these problems just so that they have jobs, which should not be the case. But I think performance measurement, right, is huge for government, and I know that there's voting.
You don't get that when you're getting 10 minutes a day in the car. That's the problem, is that people have to engage more in their political system.
Yep.
That is the biggest problem, is an apathetic populace.
Yep. So, all right, well, we were all over the place kind of, but I think the pay to play idea is, hopefully you guys know what that is now. There's a lot of it. It's going to probably be here forever. And really, if you don't like it, if you don't like what's going on, I mean, I don't know. What do you do? I mean, if you don't like, I would learn about what I learn about, how society is, how technology is improving the ability to hold not just, government officials accountable, but businesses accountable, communities accountable. And I think it's awesome. And I think, right now, a lot of government officials, those that have been elected are more cautious about what even though they do, have this bribe that's coming in, it says, if you do this, I'll do that. They think twice. And I think that's a good thing.
Well, and again, it may sound, and I encourage everybody to listen to this podcast, not once, not twice, but maybe 3 times, because it really, it may sound on the surface like it's all over the place, but it all kind of ties into the same exact problem, same idea. So to answer the original question, is pay to play a good or a bad thing? And the answer is it's both.
Yep.
Depending on how it's used.
Yep. So this is all free information to you too. And so the thing is, it's like with free information, sometimes people treat it like it isn't worth anything. So the idea is, now that you have this information, okay, step back and see how it affects you, and what decision are you going to make with this information? And again, the whole definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. And that's where it's mind-boggling to me that I don't know what it's going to take for people to think, wow, maybe I should put my money somewhere else. Maybe I should do something different because what I'm doing is not working and the evidence is all around me, but yet because everybody else is doing it, I'm going to keep at it. That idea is just
crazy.
It frustrates me, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm still going to issue that challenge. I want to sit down with you in a series of podcasts where we start calling people out on some of these strategies that we know don't work.
Yep.
And start possibly even naming names and saying, okay, here's what they say.
Let's do it.
Here's why it doesn't work. So you can listen to that or for that in upcoming episodes of the Wealth Standard Radio.
Cool. That sounds good. I've already started to make my list, Chunga.
See that? All right. I'm looking forward to it, man.
All right, cool. Well, everyone, thank you so much for listening. It's been a good show. It's awesome talking to you. You know a ton about a ton.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
And definitely tune in to next week, and I'll announce some of the stuff I did in the beginning if you're just tuning in. But we have a real estate investment summit that's coming up in just a few days. So go to cashflowwealthsummit.com to register. It's free. It's only a few hours. We have 8 speakers, I believe, and there's some good content. We have some killer speakers.
Get some snacks. Get your jammies. I'm telling you, get your jammies on. Yeah. And it's going to be a great event.
If you want to, and we'll even accept if you have your Halloween costume already, wearing that, totally do it. That'd be amazing.
Absolutely.
My son has been running around the house in Spider-Man for the last couple of weeks.
Nice.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week.
You've been listening to the Wealth Standard Radio Show, your gold standard in everything financial.